a young man when I first met him.
You think? Speaking of young man, come up here a second. Here, you stand up in the middle.
So anyway, I gotta give my appreciation to Ray, because he's come to my El Camino class and our workshops, and I always appreciate his insight, especially on interest rates. And I always flash back to when rates first dropped down to like 4% or just under 4. It was like 3 point. And we thought, if you remember, if you guys have been around, we thought, oh, this is crazy. It's only going to be down for like a week or so, or maybe short term. This was what, 10 years ago or something. And Ray gave his talk, and he says, nope. He goes, rates are going to go down more. And we thought he was crazy. What have you been smoking? So Ray's back for his economic forecast.
Okay, now I want you to notice here, we're 3 generations. Look how the generations are being corrupted. I have a tie. Dirk has gone down the tubes on that.
It's hung out with me too long.
My theme today is things are changing. And this 3 generations.
You're lucky most of the people are wearing pants.
Yeah. Thank you.
From the Zoom
You
meeting.
guys were showing. No.
Thank you, Ray.
Okay, listen, for the first time in 25 years, the world is going to change economically. And Dirk is correct. When I first started to come here, interest rates were considerably higher than 4%. And I would ask everybody, raise your hand, who thinks rates will go up, stay the same, or go down? And you all raise your hand up. And I said, you're wrong. They're going down. They're going down. They're going down for years and years and years. Now they're going up. You might as well get the hang of it. We have inflation for the first time in many, many years. The Federal Reserve Board is telling us it is likely to be somewhat temporary. Let's hope they're correct. And listen, they're pretty smart people there, so there's a very good probability they are correct. But there's also a pretty good chance they're not. I think you will continue to have a flurry of inflation. There are shortages of everything. You cannot get chips, you cannot get cars, you cannot get in a restaurant, you cannot get in a sporting event. There is an incredible amount of demand. You can't find a house. You can't find a car. I mean, you can't find much of anything. We went to a restaurant last night near my home at 6 o'clock. And the place was packed. I mean, 6 o'clock. And prices are high for food and everything. So I think we're in a totally different cycle. How long that cycle will persist remains to be seen. I think it'll persist a while, but I have a hedge. The Fed is saying otherwise. And don't kid yourself. We like to bash these people, but they're pretty smart. So they're not stupid. They're just not. There's an old adage: never, ever, ever fight the Federal Reserve, because they've got their hand or finger on the pulse of money and costs and so on. But in a capitalistic society, when the cost of capital goes up or down, it's very meaningful. And right now, the cost of capital is going up. That is meaningful. You're in a capitalistic society. The cost of capital matters. It matters a lot. You're not going to get into a recession. For the last 5 years, you've heard people say, oh my word, prices on housing are so high, they got to come back down. You don't have a recession unless you have excess inventory. Excess inventory creates recessions because you have to lay off, cut back, etc. We have an architect who offices on the floor of our building. He said that everybody in LA is building an an ADU? Am I saying it correctly? He said everybody in LA is building an ADU. He is busier than a one-armed paper hanger. I mean, he just can't keep up. People are trying to put together inventory, but you can't get it. And that was the theme of this morning's conversation, as near as I can tell, is there's no inventory. And there isn't going to be any for a while. I told you for a number of years, I guarantee not one of you have ever done it, but if you want to get some inventory, go see your priest, your rabbi, your minister. They know who's getting divorced. They know who's dying. And when you're divorced or dying, there's a house on the market. You all laugh at that, but I'm serious. Your clergy wants to help their flock. And if you offer your services in a very genuine and in authentic fashion, they will refer you. They want to help their congregants. And when people are getting a divorce or there's a sickness or death in the family, the clergy are among the first to know. Also, your psychologist or psychiatrist or therapist. But these people are caring and they want to help. And if you offer help, they'll refer. That is one excellent way to do a good deed, not be cynical about it, and to also do a good deed for you. And I bet you none of you have ever really applied that avenue. And I think it's a grave error. It's a grave error. Interest rates. Jonathan, you said they're up to about 3.75? Yes. Okay. I know you're all complaining about that. My God, they're no longer free. You actually have to pay 0.25% after inflation, net of inflation. These are the lowest rates, second lowest rates in the history of mankind. They were lower a couple months ago. I mean, give it a rest. It's still almost free money. Warren Buffett says, and Warren Buffett's smarter than we are. He says that if you don't get a mortgage, you're an idiot. It's free money. Anytime anybody wants to give you free money, let them. So stop whining about how high they are. They're lower than anybody in this room's lifetime, except maybe her because she's young. You get qualified as the youngest. But interest rates are still an incredible bargain. And they may get ahead of you. Now, as rates go up, historically, what has happened when rates tend to go up, at least in the past, and in the past, I mean the late 70s, early 80s, essentially. As rates go up, demand gets higher because that young couple says, I don't know, honey, they're going to go up again. We better hurry. They just got to know that. It is not an impediment. It's probably a stimulant for your industry, whether you know it or not. So don't apologize for rising rates. You didn't do it. There's nothing you can do about it. Them's the facts of life. So procrastination is no longer their friend. Rates may get higher. So procrastination is not their buddy. When rates were going down, procrastination made sense. But now it won't. So it tends to be a stimulant to move them along in many, many instances. Now, I will tell you this, the initial in the 70s and 80s, people would say they don't believe it and maybe they'll come back. But I think that here, there's not enough inventory for that. I think it will stay a stimulant even early on because there's just no inventory. And especially in a state like California, it's hard to build sometimes. Getting the permits and so on are not that easy necessarily. Let's see. I was talking about shortages. I cannot, my wife has to drink a lot of lemon juice, hates it, or kidney stones. I can't get cups to put the juice in. Costco has no coffee cups for like 3 weeks. There is nothing out there. I'm telling you, there is incredible demand and lack of stuff. I'm floored that you can't get a cup, a paper cup.
Just wait till the toilet paper is gone again.
Say it again?
Just wait till the toilet paper is
Yeah,
gone.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be at all surprised. So one of the things to recognize is all recessions tend to be a result of excess inventory. We don't have that. So there's no recession. People think they're going to wait for prices to come down. They're probably going to wait a long time. Probably going to wait a long time. That's true for our business also. We're in the investment business, and the only reason I come down here, I don't even know you people. The only reason I come down here is we want to get your an opportunity to work with you on your retirement accounts and your SEP accounts, things like that. But the investment business is also changing. We're entering a new era for the economy. We just are. And your portfolios probably should be reviewed, right? By us or by someone. But you're entering a new era. You just are. And I think you have to come to grips with that. Now, if you ever want for one of your lunch and learns, I'd be happy to kind of fill that in to a greater extent. But it's just emerging, so I don't really know how it will necessarily manifest and so on yet. But I think you cannot ignore that we are having a turnaround from that is different from the last 25 years. We're trying to embargo a lot of producers such as China and so on for political reasons. I have no beef with that, but that too will boost prices. One of the reasons we had no inflation for so long is we can outsource production. But when we take production back into our own country, it also will lift labor wages because there will be demand for employees, and you can see that everybody needs to hire someone. Everybody's trying to hire. And one way you hire is you raise wages. So inflation, the lack of inflation is changing. We're in a new era. So that's true for your business. It's true for your portfolios. It's going to be true for a lot of things. And when there's a shift like that, it tends to be ongoing. So don't kid yourself. And you want to start to really educate yourself on how this may manifest for your business, for your portfolio, for your entire financial well-being. All right, what questions might you have about any of that? If you all get this? You all? I'm very impressed. Okay, I do think interest rates will, yes, somebody has, yes.
Federal government pump money, programs, money supply, anything that plays into the,
The question is with the government pumping money, make sure I'm not misstating it because I had a hard time hearing. With the government pumping money into for stimulus in the last year or so, then the money supply, will that stimulate inflation? Is that your question?
yes.
Yeah. Yes and no. You know, I never understood that. That was a bit of an Alan Greenspan when he was the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board rhetoric. But it seems to me that when the Reagan administration pumped money into the economy, mostly for defense spending at that time, inflation collapsed. And Carter was very strict with money and inflation went through the roof. The Japanese pump money like crazy and they have no inflation. So I don't think there's a very direct correlation. I think it depends on how the money circulates. Right now, everybody, most especially the prosperous, are hoarding. So they can pump money all they want, but if people aren't moving it into the economy, and it's hard to move it in when you can't buy a car, you can't buy a house, you can't get a restaurant. It's hard to do when you can't, when there's nothing to buy. When I say nothing, you know, on a relative scale. But I don't think so. Now, there was a headline in today, one of today's papers. I get 3 or 4 papers every morning, and I just scanned them before coming down here. We now have a national debt of 30 trillion. That's a new high watermark. 30 trillion is an incomprehensible number. But you know, everybody worries about that depending on your politics and so I don't really give a damn about your politics. It's crazy. The Japanese have far more national debt than we do. And they got a lot of problems, but inflation has never been one of them. I mean, there doesn't seem to be a direct correlation there at all. So I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is you just can't get stuff. And as we particularly try to draw production back to the United States, and there's a lot of good to be said for that, but it also increases prices because our labor is more expensive than labor in third world countries. Yeah.
Yeah, Rick, a good number of folks still think that there's going to be a crash, much like what we experienced back in 2008. How would you address that?
That's probably not true. There has, in my lifetime, i.e. in your lifetimes, there has never been a real estate crash. There have been banking crashes. You're in a capital intense industry. To buy a house, you need to have borrowed money. That's capitalism, right? You're in a capital intense industry. So here's the deal. If you cannot get capital, it's over. The 2 crashes in your You didn't have a real estate crash, you had a banking crash. The savings and loans went out of business in the late 90s. And in 08, the financial industry went down the tubes. So you could get a house, you just couldn't get money for the house. So the crash was a banking crash. Does that make sense to any of you? Here and now, the banks seem to be quite healthy. Now, one of the things that was always a tip-off to me, I moved to Los Angeles in 1990 from Arizona. And in 1989, Arizona real estate went down the tubes. And when I moved here, California real estate was still doing very well in 90 and 91. And I try to figure that out. And I know what happened in hindsight. I mean, I started to figure it out. The savings and loans closed everywhere. But in Southern California, you had two waves, unprecedented in American history, by the way, two waves of rich immigrants. The Persians, who were coming from Iran, bringing bags of money because they were the rich Persians who were being thrown out, and the Hong Kong Chinese, when the English let it go. They brought bags of money and they were the lenders. So the S&Ls were gone, but you still had lenders in this little pocket of the world. And until their money was exhausted, you didn't crash. But once it was, you crashed. There was no, it was a banking crash, both times. Not a real estate crash. Does that make any sense to you? So here's the deal. If the banks shut down, and right now there's no evidence or no suggestion they will, they're healthy. But if they were to shut down, it's over. It's not a real estate crash, it's a banking crash. You need capital in your industry. You're hungry for capital. And some of you probably complain about that debt and this and that, but yet your whole business is about, let's get some debt. That is your whole enterprise, for heaven's sake. So don't ever complain about people's debt. You're trying to encourage them, for God's sake. You're the worst culprits for debt. Yes?
So everyone's kind of paying over listing and by like $100,000
Right.
policy. What is gonna happen? What is gonna happen if more inventory comes in, or their prices will go down?
Yeah, they'll probably pay under listing.
They're gonna be in over their head? So
No, they'll pay under listing. I mean, that's all right. Listen, if somebody wants $700,000, you know, I don't have a whiteboard here, but one of the things that kind of fascinates me, I really like real estate agents. I've given talks to real estate agents a lot. You're all salespeople. I like salespeople. You know, they're going to be optimistic and kind of fun and so on. But you're not any good with arithmetic. You're a disaster.
Unless it's a
On
commission.
We're just kind of fun.
Yeah,
It's kind of fun.
just kind of. Yeah, it depends on if you made a sale that day.
Yeah.
You made a sale, you're in a good mood. This one's in a good mood. You made 3 closings. You've been in a very good mood lately, right? Anyhow, you're a disaster on numbers. Here's the thing, and I've talked about this when I had a whiteboard in the past, but if somebody gets an additional $50,000 more or $50,000 less, what does that really mean to? At today's bank rates, you're getting maybe, you probably aren't getting a full 1% interest on your money, probably 0.5%. But let's just say 1%. On $50,000, you really sacrifice $500 a year. I mean, it is not going to be a deal maker or a deal breaker. And I've said that to all of you for a number of years. Would you agree with that? So here's what I know. It's not a deal breaker, or people wouldn't be paying above asking. And it won't be a deal breaker whenever people accept below asking. It just isn't. They either want to sell their house or buy their house, or they don't. So when you look at what does that money represent in terms, a lot of it is ego and pride. But when you look at what does it represent in terms of return on money, it's not significant enough to bust the deal. It's just not. And where you see that, I've said this for years, and I think Dirk will recall, I think you will, getting older, so sometimes this recall thing is harder. But I think you will recall for real now, whenever I would say, be the highest bidder whenever people were buying a house. You have to be the highest bidder. And what's it really costing you? If you're paying another $50,000, you're giving up $500 a month. Big deal. You want the house or you don't. Stop thinking around for another $5,000.
We need to put you in the back seat of the car when we're driving the buyer.
Well, I've already said, before you put them in the car, you need to have a come to Jesus mathematics meeting.
He's gonna do mathematics at one of them.
You have
There
to
you go.
have a meeting on what does that really mean to you, other than your pride and ego. But it's probably not as meaningful as you think. Now, the proof's in the pudding. You're all getting over asking price. Honestly, it was never meaningful, and it won't be meaningful the other way either. I think you had a question, somebody. You did. If there's a war, oh God, I don't know. I really don't. I mean, you know, every war is different. World War II was very different in Vietnam, in terms of what impact it had on the economy. Afghanian war had no impact on the economy. I mean, every war is different in how it unfolds. So I don't think I can tell you. Say it again. If it's a full-blown war, I really don't know. I don't see that as being the case. But who knows? I mean, if it is, you got bigger problems anyway.
5 years ago, you could ask you about COVID and you wouldn't have known what would happen either.
Yeah, that's exactly
And
right.
it actually turned out good.
Yeah, yeah. He was ahead, and then I'll come back to you.
Okay.
So there was a banking problem that affected us.
Right.
And we're affected by a lot of different things.
Right.
It may not be a real estate crash, but it can brutally affect this industry. In 1981, I remember when I was trying to sell homes at 18%. We were doing wraparound sleeping seconds.
Right.
Great.
Right.
5 years later, they wake up and their buyers are shot. 91, aerospace decided, well, we're not going to.
That was pretty regional, though. That wasn't that.
No, it was.
Yeah. It was here. It was right here, yeah.
Yeah, so while it may not be actually a real estate crash, we're affected by all. of
Right,
it.
right, right.
That's like.
Yeah, but you know,
But that was
honestly,
also
you're not
what-
going,
What he taught me is it was banking. I mean, all of our crashes was back to money. And everything I'm reading now, you know, banks are as flush as they've ever.
they're pretty healthy. They're so flush, they don't actually want your money. They would like you not to come in. They're doing everything they can to discourage you. They have no employees there. You understand the line, they pay you no interest. Yeah, they don't want your money. In Germany, until about 3 weeks ago, if you put money in the bank, you had to pay them for safety deposit. There was no interest. You paid interest to deposit money. So they do not want your money. They don't want you to come in. They don't want you to bother them. They have no interest in you. Right? And they're paying you 1/4%, if that, and they're charging now 3 3/4 for a mortgage. That's a big profit to them. So you think interest rates are low? They're saying it's pretty high. I only pay a quarter and I'm getting 3 3/4. They're kidding. That's a good deal.
And I read that spread is usually only 2%,
Yeah.
like historically, and now it's up like 3%.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's meaningful when you're talking about gazillions of dollars. You know, that really matters. But anyhow, we're not going back to 18%. I hear people say that all the time. My first house was 16 1/4. The guy sold me the house carried, so I had a bargain. It was a bargain. But at any rate, and I hear people saying, well, you know, I remember I paid 60. You're not going to be paying no 18%. You're 3 3/4 for God's sake. Give it a rest. Yes.
I have a question. I just need your opinion because I was just so curious. It just happened over the weekend, and I have a cousin who lives in San Francisco, and she's just listed her home, 2,000 square feet, 3-story. I mean, typical San Francisco home for $2 million. And she asked for my opinion because you know, I'm a realtor, and she said they expected to get 30%, you know, higher than 2 million, right? So anyway, Friday was due, and she called me and she told me that they got 14 offers. 4 of them were cash at 2.85. So it was 850,000 over. So my question to you is, I'm just curious where these people make their money.
In San
And
Francisco?
put it,
San
I mean,
Francisco?
not for San Francisco, but in just general. I mean, I live in PV, same thing. I have an office coming in at 3 million cash. So, I mean, you can.
Great to
talk
be in
about-
America, baby. There's a
But
lot
I mean, you can talk about it,
Silicon Valley, Silicon
I
Valley. These
mean-
people have more money than they know what to do with, and they're 18 years old.
So where does this money can come
All
from?
of us are giving the money.
Everybody likes to bitch and moan. We're thriving in America. It's great to be an American. America, we know what we're doing here. It's a very vibrant economy, but we like to just complain. But things have been really good for 30 years. I mean, I don't know why people can't get their arms around that. Why do you think the whole world's trying to get in? Nobody's trying to get out. I mean, things are good here. This is a great place to be. And not only is the country a great place to be, but you're in a great part of the country. I mean, it's not like, I have a client, get a load of this. They had a 900 plus square foot house that they sold somewhere down here in the South Bay. They sold it for, I think it was like 680 or something like that. They bought 900 plus square feet. They bought a 5,200 square foot place in Wyoming. I would kill myself if I had to live there. But they like camping and hunting, and for them it's a good choice. 5,000 square feet for 400 and something. They have $200,000 in their pocket, and they got an extra 4,000 plus square feet. I mean, are you kidding me? It depends on where you are to some extent. I get that. But you are not only in a good nation, but you're in a good part of the nation. And certainly the Bay Area, even more so. I mean, there's a lot of young, hot money in the Bay Area, a lot of hot money.
And low inventory.
Yeah, no inventory. And during the pandemic, a lot of people saved a lot of money. I mean, it did nothing, Zippo, nada. I mean, I watched television all damn day. They didn't even go to work, and the money kept pouring in. I mean, who would have thought? Like you said, last year or 2 years ago with the pandemic, who would have guessed that you can lay in bed and watch television and still make more money than ever with nothing to spend it on? I mean, that's kind of amazing.
Netflix made so much money, they raised their prices.
Yeah, I mean, is this a great country or what? And now people don't even want to go to work. I don't know what the hell they're doing all day. I mean, I go to work. I hope never to retire as long as I have good health, because I can't imagine sitting around watching daytime TV or kill myself. Yes.
So to piggyback off that conversation, did the offer come in, is there still a lot of cash offers coming in from China? And did that offer remove their appraisal contingency?
Yeah, I asked them specifically, and they got 14 offers, right? And 4 offers. Okay, so anyway, top one was 2.850, right? No contingency period, 7-day escrow.
Right.
I was just shocked.
Yeah, I don't think as much is coming in from China though. That's
But
my instinct.
but I added to that. Since this is my cousin, I asked the buyer's last name. I was just curious if these are like Chinese or
Right.
the money's coming from Asia, because I'm just trying to figure out where this money.
Yeah.
I mean, how these people have this $3 million cash?
I get it.
Not
I
just
get it.
one or
What's
two,
the name?
but so many. But anyway, the names they told me, but it was pretty much all American.
Americans, yeah. We're
Yeah.
the king of the hill.
I mean, you want Asian
Honestly,
last name.
we're always the king of the hill. We are a rich, rich country. And I think we lose sight of that, I don't know why I was doing this, but I just did a survey online about 3 weeks ago. I don't even remember why, but listing the best countries to live in terms of happiness and whatever, all these surveys. And, the number one was like Norway and Finland, and I mean, they don't have anybody living there. And those people don't know what they're talking about. They're all shut in for the winter. They have it's a homogeneous society. They have few immigrants. They have few problems along those lines. But of the countries that have diversity and size, we're it. We're number 20, but the first 19 I never heard of. I mean, there's like 5 people. They're one family. They get along. I mean, the reality is For a dynamic, diverse, sizable country, nobody's close. Nobody's close. And I think we lose sight of that sometimes. And you are in one of the best parts of that. So, if you hustle, whoever it was back here you were referring to, you hustle. Who had the circus open house? Who was it? Okay. If you hustle, you can make a damn good go of it in this part of the country. You can, right? You gotta hustle with it.
Good question.
Yeah.
I just saw the news yesterday about $30 million, $30 trillion.
Yeah.
And then rising.
Right.
And it seems to be, it's like a scare that, the whole country's gonna implode because of that. But how do you see it?
People have been complaining about that since Roosevelt in 1932. I mean, it's not been a problem. And our level of debt, one thing, if you get perspective and know the arithmetic, our level of debt after World War II is the highest it's ever been as a percentage of the overall domestic product, which is the size of the economy. It was far and away the highest it's ever been. And yet we became the most prosperous country the world has ever known. Because it's how you spend the debt. What did you spend it on? Now, somebody was asking, we spent a lot of money during the pandemic on non-productive debt, just handing out money. That beats having a depression. We spent a lot of money during the first oil embargo in the 70s. But at that time, a lot of people complained about that. At that time, you had a choice: run up debt or get rid of oil. If we had no oil, you shut down the economy. You just shut it down. It's a depression. That's the end of it. We're oil-based. So I would rather have had that inflation for 5 or 6 years than a 5 or 6 year depression. So sometimes, actually, believe it or not, we make pretty wise choices. We're pretty good at this. If you're the richest country in the world has ever seen, you've got to come to the conclusion we're not bad at this. Now, if you sit around at any local bar, you get a bunch of yahoos talking about how bad we are, but they're stupid. What else can I tell you? I mean, it's just not the case. Are we perfect? Of course not. Are we better than most anybody else? Of course we are. I mean, we just are. So I wouldn't get all caught up in these big global, let somebody else worry about that. Your business is, you will continue to have supply shortages, inventory shortages. I think interest rates will continue to creep up, not so dramatically, but up. I think that your business will not be shattered. You're not going to have a crash because the banks are healthy. I think that really matters to you. I think you're still in a good spot, but you're going to have to change some of your tactics and your pitches. You have to come to grips with a new order. And that's true for your portfolios too, which I really want to try and impress upon you. I think it's really pertinent that you review what you're doing investment-wise, because whatever may have worked in the past, a lot of you, it hasn't worked anyway, but whatever may have worked in the past, you may need to make some shifts. And shifts are uncommon. Cycles last long times. I think we may be moving to a new cycle. And it's very important that you acknowledge it. Okay. All right, any other questions? How am I getting the hook? Okay, anytime anyone in our industry speaks publicly, we must have record of attendees. So don't just be cavalier about that. Please fill these out and give them back. We need your name and so on. If you want an appointment, just check you do and we'll work it out. If you don't want an appointment, then okay. Yes.
I just wanted to talk about what you said. I did open house for 3 days in a house. The bracket in between 500 to 700,000, which is a lot of money for the rest of the world.
Right.
In here, it's nothing.
That's right. It's
You have
jumping.
a demographic between late 20s to early 40s, up to 43 years old, that are ready to buy. And they go into care.
Right.
So it's really interesting to see that, because I agree with you. I think this is
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great time. But it's been a great time for 80 years. mean, it's not a new thing. You know, I mean, if you, whenever I've given talks at the association, they have these pictures in the back of the room. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Of old San Pedro or whatever the heck it is. Yeah, okay. I mean, real estate in this area has unrelentingly gone up with a couple of blips. But, you know, and that's true nationwide. Now, if you live in Buffalo, Detroit, Cleveland, perhaps not. Perhaps not. Those are cities who have really been hit hard over the last 30 years. But, you know, in this area, the market you're in is not new. It's just not. Okay, please fill those out. If you want an appointment, please check yes. We'll make it. If you don't want an appointment, don't check yes. I hope you will. I think you should. Can I have that?
Great. What about like the recent dips in the stock market?
Recent dip?
Recent dips in like the stock market?
Yes, it's pretty mild. I mean, you know, the market's gone straight up, so you're likely to get some pauses in there. But again, I don't see anything dramatic. I mean, you may continue to get some dip, but I think temporary. You know, someone like you who's young, an older person who's drawing income, that's more meaningful. But for a young person, things are still pretty good.
You want to go over the S&P?
No, well, I can, okay. I hate doing this whenever you're filling out cards, because then nobody fills the damn things out. Fill those cards out. It's a compliance thing. We need to know who attends when we give a public talk. This is the Standard & Poor's 500 index, which is an index or a basket of 500 stocks over the past 5 years. I want to compare it to a lot of mutual funds that you guys have. Put PTTAX, I think it is. Hey, Caroline, can you look up Fidelity's 2030? Yeah, let's see, PTT. There, that's good. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, put that up. A lot of you have this fund, and I know it, in your retirement accounts. The last 5 years, the market's up 100%. This is down 0.2%. It's flat. What's the FFFEX?
Yes.
Okay, try FFFEX, not EZ, just FFF. Yeah, Fidelity Freedom 2030. This is one of the most frequently used funds in retirement accounts. It's the Fidelity 2030. It's a terrible fund. I bet you half of you have the damn thing. What's the 2035?
FFTHX.
T. Okay, FFTHX.
The 2020?
Yeah, no, not 2020. No, FFTH.
No, FFHTX.
Okay,
I'm
FFH.
sorry, FFTHX.
There you go, FFTH, there you go. That's the 2035 fund. Another fund, they tell you, well, let's diversify. Let's do a 2030 or 2035. I mean, really, they're the same. There's no diversification. Now, put up XHB. This is the Home Builders Index. So it's a basket of home builders around the country.
HBX?
XHB. X Home Builder.
How are they?
There you go. I mean, really, you know, your business has been thriving. Now, if you have, and we've recommended this for you guys in the past, but if you have this, I would say you may want to lighten up or sell it now, because with rates going up, you may get a hiccup for a while. I wouldn't be surprised. Now put up VGT. Vanguard Information Technology. Technology is a pillar of the economy. I mean, look at that compared to, I mean, really, would you rather have this or this? You all have this. Based on statistics, most people have things that have underperformed. I mean, really, you kind of look at your portfolios and rethink them. And you just do.
Nobody's
you
asking,
could-
but what about the